Welcome to SJS Arts. So today I'm gonna do my top 25 favorite films of the 2000s. This is once again a response video to Solitary Ronin Films, who did a video about this topic yesterday. I really enjoyed this video. His list was very interesting. I have some of the same films on my list, but mostly it's different. Although the theme of my list is very similar as the theme of Ronin's list, which is that there are lots of Japanese and South Korean films on my list, just like there were on Solitary Ronin films list. And obviously, if you know me, that's no surprise, especially with the Japanese films, as Japan is my favorite country for cinema. Yeah, but this was really fun to compile again. And I'm gonna preface this list by saying that again, it's a favorites list, not the greatest films list. That's what Ronin also said about his list. So if I did a greatest films of the 2000s list, it would be different. Although some of these films would definitely be on the greatest list, especially the first one, for example, Showwood Werkmeister Harmonies 2. But some of these wouldn't be on my greatest films of the 2000s list. And also another preface before we start is that many of these I have to rewatch. So after a rewatch, I might like them more or I might like them less. That's what I said with the 2010s as well. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, let's start with the list. So we are gonna go from number 1 to number 25. So in reverse order to what Ronin did. Yeah. But number 1 is a very obvious pick. It's David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, which I absolutely love. It's my second favorite film of all time. So obviously it's gonna be number 1 here. My favorite film of all time is another Lynch film, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which will be the number 1 of the 90s list, of course. And even in the 2010s, if you watch that video, Twin Peaks The Return was the number 1. So every decade, the number 1 film is by David Lynch. Well, he's my favorite director, so what can I say? But of course, people, when they talk about this film, they always talk about how complex it is and how they didn't understand it. But it's actually not that complex once you realize kind of the structure of the film and what the last 25 minutes of the film are. It's really not as complex as you might think. And again, even if a film is complex, even if you don't understand it, that doesn't mean that you have to hate the film. I know many people have that approach that if they don't understand something, it's always the fault of the film and not never fault of themselves. And there are many films that I don't understand, but many of them I still love. So again, art doesn't always have to be understood. And there isn't like a one particular way to understand one particular piece of art. So I think those types of comments where people always say, I didn't understand it, the movie sucks, like, I can't stand it. But anyway, that's kind of off topic. Maybe I'll talk about that topic in a video someday. But yeah, absolutely love the female leads in this film. Absolutely love the vibe, the cinematography, love the humor. I think this is one of David Lynch's funniest films. I think his funniest film is Blue Velvet by far, but I think this might be his second funniest film. Like when the Mark Pellegrino, the assassin, is in the office, and yeah, that's really fun scene. The kind of coffee table scene is really funny. The this is the girl scenes are really funny. But then the film balances that humor out with some of the most horrifying scenes ever, like in the last 20 minutes. And I always have a tendency to watch this film just before I go to bed, which is always an awful idea because I never can stop thinking about the film when I go to bed and then I cannot fall asleep as it always disturbs me. And it's weird that I used to think that Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is way more disturbing than Mulholland Drive, but I've kind of, as I've watched that film so many times, it doesn't disturb me anymore as much. Even the Bob character doesn't disturb me that much anymore. He used to like ruin my sleep for months back in the day, but these days I can handle him. But for some reason, the Mulholland Drive, the last 20 minutes just destroys me every time. Like after the scene in the theater when the Silencio no Hai Panda, like after that it just absolutely destroys me at the old couple and everything. So yeah, but this is just a perfect movie. Absolutely adore it. It's something that you can watch all the time. Although these days I try to kind of not watch the Lynch films all the time because I think you never know. I might ruin them for myself if I watch them all the time. But I'm always kind of in the mood for them, so I kind of have to stop myself from watching them all the time. But I'm the type of person that I cannot watch film like 50 times and never get bored of it usually. So I know some people just watch the same film like every month, and that's not for me. So I kind of have to space the viewings out a bit, even though I think David Lynch films probably won't get boring for me ever, but you never know. So I don't want to take that risk. Yeah, don't drink all the coke. I have a huge crush on Naomi watching this film. Yeah. God. Yeah. What a film. What a film. Now I really feel like watching it, but I think the next David Lynch thing that I will rewatch is probably Twin Peaks: The Return. So yeah, but we'll see. Then my number two and three are pretty much tied. It was really hard to decide which will go as number two and which one will go as number three. Let's see on Sonos Magnum Opus, Love Exposure, a 4 hour epic that feels like a very ridiculous film, even a kind of a stupid film. But there's actually lots of layers there. It really kind of talks about religion, for example, and the concept of sin and things like that. So it's actually a fairly deep movie, even though it might seem like a just full on ridiculous insanity. But there's a lot to analyze in the film if you want to do that too. It really doesn't feel like a 4 hour movie. It feels like a more like a 2.5 hour movie because it's just constant entertainment and the plot is structured really well and the film is paced really well that it never gets boring and the characters are very engaging even though they are type of people you really wouldn't want to meet in real life, but they are fun to follow. The cinematography is interesting. There's lots of like handheld and but it feels like very hypnotic and varied and yeah, such a great film. Yeah, we'll probably talk about this in the podcast sometime this year. And the next film we are actually gonna talk about in the podcast this week, it's Kim Ki-duk's Three Iron. I'll be watching it for the third time. Some of these days, probably maybe tomorrow, but definitely before the podcast, of course. Yeah. Even though I mean, do remember the film quite well, so I could talk about it even without watching it again for the podcast, but I'm really dying to watch it again, so yeah. But I think I'm not gonna talk about it now as I'm gonna do an in-depth discussion on it with Altes on Saturday, so no reason to talk about it now, and I've talked about this probably in like 5 or 6 videos at least, so yeah. Well, the next one we also talked about on the podcast is Suyakin Chef's The Return. We did like a 50-minute long discussion on this, and we really talked about the themes and the characters, the visuals and everything, so probably shouldn't talk about it here either. But this, while it even I think won some like awards and stuff, and Suyakin Chef is like a fairly well-known filmmaker, but I still think that this film doesn't get enough discussion. I think it's absolutely incredible, absolutely masterful, both aesthetically, also how ambiguous it is, how interesting it is, all the symbolism in there, the vibe, the atmosphere. I think it's very relatable for many people, definitely for me. I realized that even more since we talked about it. Yeah, what a great film. Then this one I've also mentioned many times on my channel and even my channel page background has this girl and it actually has this shot of her. This character is Momoko, a girl who is obsessed about the Rococo period. But yeah, it's Tetsuya Nagashima's Kamikaze Girls. Ronin also had this on his list and he actually watched it very recently due to my recommendation, so that was cool. And this will be another one for the podcast as well. But I actually love many of the reviews here on Letterboxd. I usually don't like the kind of one sentence reviews, but this actually has some that I really like. Like this one, it's so wonderful to be gay, pretty, and badass. Like that really kind of um, sums the film up really well. Comment is from a fellow Finn too, so I'm not the only Finnish person who loved this film. Yeah, make them gay cowards. Yeah, because it's kind of ambiguous whether they are a queer couple in the end or not. Yeah, and yeah, these like, my God, this bitch is gay. Good for them. Yeah, yeah, I love this. Yeah, but it's such a funny film. It has like one of my favorite aesthetics of any film ever, with great use of color, with great angles, and yeah, great kind of positioning of the characters. And yeah, it's such an entertaining film. It's not the deepest film out there. It doesn't say that much about society or anything like that, but I think it's all about friendships and how you can connect with people who are different than you. And it's about these kind of weird, eccentric characters. And I love these types of characters that are kind of out of the norm. I love both the punk girl chick, and funnily enough, I've been listening to some Japanese punk music lately. So if you want a great hardcore punk album from Japan, there's this band called Think Again, and their album Never. It's just 22 minutes of great hardcore punk. So go listen to that. It's not really on streaming services, I think, but it's on YouTube. So yeah, that became a new favorite recently. Yeah, but I love the punk girl, but Momoko is the one that I really relate to. Yeah, such a great movie. Can't wait to talk about it on the podcast. Then, if I did a greatest films of all time list, this might be even the number one of this decade. Actually, it's Bellatar's Werkmeister Harmonies, an incredibly dense and layered film. It just came out on 4K on Criterion, which I need to pick that release up at some point. But I really want to talk about this on the podcast at some point too, although it will be a very challenging film to talk about. It's a very political film. I think it's about conservatism and fascism, and it's about people kind of rejecting new things and going back to kind of what they know. And there's this kind of battle again of tradition, modernity, new versus old, and things like that. So yeah, but that's just kind of the, yes, very surface level. There's so much in there. It's a very difficult movie. It really clicked with me on my second watch. I think it was early last year. I really liked it on first watch too, but second watch especially. And it's on Criterion Channel apparently. It's probably the new restoration, so it probably will look really amazing. And Bellatar films always look amazing. Lots of long takes, very bleak atmosphere, like you can see from this shot. And it's a really great looking movie. I don't think it's his best looking film, why it's such amazing looking film, but I think the highlight of this film is the kind of layered themes and how you can interpret many of the things in the film. Yeah. Then the film that's probably the most relatable for me from this list, it's I Killed My Mother by Xavier Dolan. So it's about this young gay guy and his like very toxic relationship with his mother. So basically the story of my life. But yeah, I really love this film. It's so raw. It's very mature, even though Xavier Dolan was like a teenager when he wrote this, and I think like 20 when he directed it. Although there's lots of shouting and yeah, like toxic behavior from both of these characters, and but it's just so relatable. Like it's just insane how relatable it is. And of course, those films that kind of tell your own life story. Basically, it's just those films can be very hard to watch, but also very rewarding to watch because you often realize things about yourself that maybe you didn't realize beforehand. Yeah, great performances here as well. Xavier Dolan actually plays the main character, so and I think his performance was great in this too, and really beautiful cinematography as well. I think he has been influenced a lot by also the French directors. I think especially Jacques Demy, for example. And I love Jacques Demy, so yeah. But this is such an amazing film. I really hope that this gets like a nice boutique release at some point. Yeah. Then The Man Without a Past by Aki Kaurismäki, one of his most well-known films. So this is about this guy on the left, and he loses his memory, and then he lives this like really poor life on the docks. And yeah, it's very entertaining, even though it has a fairly bleak plot when you describe it, but has his deadpan humor, his great weird characters. Yeah, I just really love this film, and we will talk about this on the podcast too. I know my good friend Tony also watched this recently and really loved it, and he wrote a review for it. Yeah, I mean there are a couple of Kaurismäki films that I like more than this, but I think this is definitely one of his best and a big personal favorite of mine. Yeah, so I have to say that the top eight, so the films that we have now covered, like I was like quite sure about that order, but now that we move out of the top eight, the order I'm a bit more unsure about, I have to say. But we have Lee Chang-dong's Oasis, which might be my favorite of his, although I'm gonna be rewatching many of his films soon for the podcast again. So I might have a different opinions on the films then, but we'll see. But it's like a unconditional love story. So basically my favorite type of film, although the way that although the way their relationship begins is kind of very off-putting and problematic, and maybe I would have preferred if their relationship started a bit differently. But Lee Chang-dong films are great because they really judge these characters. They don't like give you all the answers. They really leave it up to the viewer to challenge their preconceptions about certain types of people and really think about these types of characters that you don't usually see in films. And yeah, so I really like that. I like films that explore characters that you don't usually see. Again, every film doesn't have to be about the action mans and Barbies, but we can actually look at people who aren't perfect, who have problems and things that affect their life in a negative way, and things that don't let them live their lives to the fullest. But it's a very interesting film, really makes you think, and yeah, I really love this one. Really love this one. Yeah, great movie. Then this one I talked about a few times last year, but it's Chai Ming Liang's The Wayward Cloud, which ended up becoming my favorite Chai Ming Liang film. Actually, I've seen most of the feature films. Like the one that I need to watch is I Don't Want to Sleep Alone, for example. I have that ready to go, so I'm gonna watch that soon. But this is such a weird movie. It's again about Taipei when there's a drought, and then people start getting obsessed about watermelons and they even bring that to sex and stuff. So it's weird, but it's all about kind of modern day alienation and how people try to tackle their alienation, their loneliness, things like that through, you could say, weird methods that probably won't help with that alienation, to be honest. But it's a really weird and slow paced movie. Probably not one to start with Chai Ming Liang, but if you have watched a couple of his more famous films like Goodbye Dragon Inn and What Time Is It There, Rebels of the Neon Guard, and things like that, then you can jump into this one. I think, yeah, it's such a great movie. It's even kind of funny if you have a weird sense of humor, and yeah. And I know there's like the Berlinale film festival in Berlin. They actually, I know they showed a new restoration of this film there, so hopefully this comes on like a really nice physical media edition soon because I'd love to get this. Or even alternatively, I would love to see like a better quality print on streaming and stuff because the print I watched was like a okayish DVD quality, so it could really use a better restoration. I mean, now it got that, but hopefully it kind of becomes available more than just in cinemas and film festivals and stuff. Because charmingly, and films always look really good anyway, so you want to see them in the best quality possible. Then a Koreeda film, Nobody Knows, one of his kind of more famous films. This is also one that I really relate to. It's about these young kids and their mother leaves them, doesn't really return, so they kind of have to be by themselves and survive by themselves without that adult supervision. And I had to be alone a lot when I was a kid, and I also had to look out for myself and also kind of grow up a bit faster, do that. So that's why I can really relate to a film like this when you don't have like good parents and people who actually really care about you, and when they don't like really teach you anything, and then you kind of have to learn life by yourself. So that's something I can relate to, and I know many other people can, of course, relate to that as well. But it's a fairly sad film. It's not like tearjerker sad, but when you really think about the plot and the situation these kids are, it's fairly sad. But it's a very humanistic, very beautiful film. Some really great shots. The kids give like really good performances. Yeah, it's an amazing film. Yeah, I really love this one. Need to rewatch it. Well, this film is talked about all the time by so many people, but it's Edward Yang's most famous film, Yi, his final film also, and the first one I ever watched and watched it a couple of times. And yeah, this is kind of peak slice of life cinema from Taiwan. Absolutely beautiful film, like the cinematography. It's just like if I had to give people like an example of my preferred visual style, this is like one good film to have as an example, as it has those like beautiful still shots where the angles are always just absolutely perfect, and yeah, everything is just perfect about those shots. I just This film is just really nice to look at. It's very bright, quite sunny in many of the scenes. Yeah, not that much happens in the film, but you are still kind of very interested in the film as the characters are interesting. The aesthetic is so beautiful and the vibe is great. So such an amazing film, and again another one for the podcast. So yeah, and this one I also really need to rewatch, but it's one of my favorite Theo Angelopoulos films. It's The Weeping Meadow, very poetic film, very beautiful film. And the aesthetic is absolutely amazing. And I think this shot is like very good example of Angelopoulos aesthetic in general, that of the kind of color and the type of shot, like these kind of wide, very methodical looking shots. But again, there isn't much colors. There's always like gray and white and brown and things like that, but not anything more, anything kind of more colorful. Yeah. But yeah, he had such an incredible career from the 70s and still like putting out masterpieces like this in the 2000s. So yeah, it's another film about refugees. He made quite a few of those, so there's always this kind of big political angle on his films. And I think some of his early work, for example, is like even a bit too political in the way that it kind of takes some of the emotion out of the way, that it's all about the theme and not about emotion. But I think what he perfected later on his career in films like this and also in the 90s and 80s work of his is that he realized how to combine having these big political themes, very current themes, with emotion with kind of this kind of poetic vibe and with lots of visual symbolism and things like that. So I personally prefer his 80s, 90s, and 2000s works to many of his like 70s work, like the Traveling Players. But maybe I just need to rewatch those films. But yeah, this is an absolutely incredible film. Need to rewatch it again. My memory of it is a bit hazy, so that's why I can't really talk about it as well. But yeah, looking forward to rewatching it. So please, somebody bring this to Blu-ray or 4K or even just like full HD streaming. Just like I really need to see these films in better quality. I mean, the DVD quality looks like pretty good, but when these films are some of the best looking films of all time, you really would want to see them in better quality. So this next one will be very soon for the podcast as well. Altes picked it up on DVD, so it's just a matter of time. Probably in the next couple of months we will talk about this film, but it's Kim Ki-duk's Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter and Spring, possibly his most famous film. Yeah, utterly beautiful film. Really kind of hypnotizes you, calms you down, gives you this kind of very contemplative feeling. And aesthetically, it's really beautiful. I mean, all of Kim Ki-duk's films are pretty much like really beautiful, at least the ones that I've seen. And Distant Three Iron and The Isle, those three films especially look utterly stunning. Yeah, but yeah, I'll talk about this more on the podcast. I really need to rewatch it, so the podcast will be a good excuse to rewatch it. But utterly beautiful film, and I think there will be lots to talk about it when we get to it. So yeah. Then Mysterious Skin by Greg Araki, one of my kind of highlight watches of last year. Film that's quite hard to watch, even though it's manages to be beautiful, even though it's very shocking at the same time. But I really like how the plot is structured as well. Great soundtrack with Slowdive, which is one of my favorite bands. Quintessential shoegaze, dream pop stuff. But yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is even good in this one. I'm not a huge fan of him, but in this film, he's really good. Probably actually my favorite performance from him. It's one of the best films about trauma, I think. Yeah, it just explores that in a very kind of human way, where it feels like very genuine and kind of authentic and even beautiful. And there's this big emotional climax in the end that probably will touch you a lot and make you think also. Yeah, it's pretty disturbing at the same time. But yeah, it's also all about like trauma and how people deal with trauma, how trauma changes people and how trauma makes them act. And yeah, things like that's are very important themes. But yeah, such a great movie. Then my opinion of Paul Thomas Anderson has changed in the last few years that I'm not as interested in his work anymore as I used to be, but this is like one film that I really love of his, although I haven't watched it in a while. That's actually weird that it just says locked, because I have actually seen this couple of times, so it should say two times. That's actually really weird. I think I probably like have deleted one of the loggings accidentally sometime. Like that's just weird thing that I just noticed. I definitely have watched this couple of times, not just once. That's weird. Oh yeah, I think I wrote a review for this on Letterboxd once, and then I deleted that review, so it probably deleted that whole kind of logging for it. So that's probably the reason. Anyway, it's a great movie, a bit more low key for him. It's really beautiful film. It's again another kind of unconventional love story. Adam Sandler is really good in this one. I really enjoy the soundtrack. It's also really funny. funny film, probably Paul Thomas Anderson's funniest film in my opinion. And even though it doesn't have that kind of maybe those bigger themes and things like some of his other films do, I think this just connects with me way more than There Will Be Blood or Boogie Nights or well Magnolia. I like quite a lot, but I need to rewatch it. But yeah, this is such a great movie. Yeah, beautiful aesthetically as well, and so many great scenes like that phone call scene with Adam Sandler. It's like really funny, and when he goes to the supermarkets and yeah, it's there's so many highlight scenes. I also really like the Philip Seymour Hoffman performance here. I mean, he tended to give great performances no matter in which films he was, but yeah, great stuff, great stuff. This one I talked about last year. Also, it's Hana and Alice by Shunji Iwai. So this is like a love triangle thing, teenage love triangle thing, but not in a just like a stupid cheesy way, but in like a very hypnotic and beautiful way. Actually, like Shunji Iwai's cinematography is always so beautiful. It's always like very dreamy, hypnotic, and he just uses these like weird kind of angles that really kind of sweep you in into the film. They're really hard to explain, but they are just so beautiful. Yeah, this is such a funny film, and I love again films about relationships and friendships and love and things like that. And this is a very good film about that. So many beautiful scenes. It balances both like drama and comedy really well. Yeah, and also it balances out like lowbrow and highbrow really well because how the film is made, it feels like an art house film as it's so beautiful, but then get the plot, some of the characters, it feels like it could be like a B film. Yeah, again, love triangle and everything. So yeah, such a great movie. Then Secret Sunshine by Lee Chang-dong. This is a pretty hard-hitting film. It's about this woman who again goes through these really awful experiences, like these really horrible things happen in her life. So it's all about how she deals with that and how she deals with grief. The film is all about grief and yeah, and the main character isn't like very likable in a way, but you still feel for her. And it's a really another film, just like Oasis, that really makes you think about life and human experience and things like that. And yeah, it's very sadly beautiful movie. Yeah, I really love this one. Yeah. Then we have my favorite Hao Xiao Shen film, Millennium Mambo. And yeah, this is such a beautiful, very hypnotic film with great vibes and atmosphere. And I was actually very surprised. Like I mentioned in a recent video that I didn't know that this was actually out on Blu-ray already on the US. So I need to pick that Blu-ray up at some point and rewatch this film. And I had like Yi like higher than this film, but I think if I rewatch this today and also rewatch Yi today, this could be my favorite over that. Yeah. But Hao Xiao Shen, I think there was like news fairly recently that he has now retired as he has dementia. So that's very sad as he was like one of the best filmmakers working today, like with very like genius like visual style. He really knew how to do these slow cinema films where not much happens, but where you really get drawn in by the characters and the visuals. Yeah, this is like a good example of that. Yeah, yeah. I don't really have much to say about this film at the moment, but we love it and we will do that for the podcast too. So yeah. Then one of Korea's most famous films, Still Walking. This is like a very simple film. It's kind of hard to analyze due to that fact that it's so subtle and so simple. There's not much in the surface. But then when you really follow all the character dynamics, you kind of start to understand what the film is about more, as there are these like very complex relationships that these characters have, even though the film itself is so simple. So in that way, it feels like very much like an Osu film that it has very simple plot, but there's lots of baggage between the characters that gives the film layers. Yeah, and I know Korea doesn't like to be called the modern Osu, but this film really feels like an Osu film. Yeah, but it's really beautiful, very humanistic. Yeah, very interesting film, very contemplative film. Films like this again make you also think about your own life. So in that way, it's very similar to the Lee Chang-dong films, for example, that I mentioned here. Even though the tone is very different, but in the way, the type of effect that they have on you. Yeah, yeah. Five more to go, and five more that I need to rewatch actually. So yeah, but we have Haneke is the piano teacher. I've actually recently talked about Haneke quite a lot with my friend Tony that I always mention because he kind of hates Haneke, although he likes this film, but he hates his kind of earlier work and he rants about that to me like every time we call, and I really enjoy that. And I'm not the biggest Haneke fan either. I mean, like his films, but I don't like absolutely love them. Other than this one, I really love. And Isabella Huppert is absolutely magnetic. In this film, it's a very dark and sad performance. Yeah, but as that character is kind of an asshole, you don't necessarily feel for her that much. But it's a also beautiful looking film, lots of highlight scenes, but definitely not an easy film. It's a very dark and sad film, but such a great movie. Then this next one will be very soon for the podcast. So it's a Bittersweet Life by Kim Ji-woon. Ronin also had this one on his video, and I think he mentioned that okay, it kind of seems like a very generic movie. But as it is done so well, you don't really mind that it's generic. So it's kind of like The Man from Nowhere that I mentioned in that 2010s, that it's kind of like a very generic film, but everything is just done so well that you really connect to the film and that you don't really care that it's a bit generic. Yeah. And I think there is again a place for these types of films that take like an existing very popular formula, but then they kind of perfect that formula. That obviously happens in many art forms, especially in music, a lot. But this is pretty much a perfect action thriller. Love Lee Byung-hun. I mean, he's just such a cool actor and very handsome and great performance here. There's so many hard-hitting scenes in this one. It's beautifully filmed. That's great vibe. Yeah, it's been so many years since I watched this, I think. So I'm really looking forward to rewatching it very soon for the podcast. Like this literally might be in the next couple of episodes. I mean, obviously the next one is about three Iron Man from Paris with Love, but the next two or three after that, this might be there. So I will be rewatching it very soon. Hopefully it lives up on the rewatch. But yeah, such a great movie. And I think I originally actually got interested in this film due to the fact that Solitary Rowling talked about it, if I remember correctly, because I've known Solitary Rowling since summer 2018, and I think I watched that film either in late 2018 or 2019, maybe. Then another Korean film that also Rowling had on his list, it's Joint Security Area, an early film from Park Chan-wook, one of his best, might even be his best. And my favorites from him are this and The Handmaiden. But yeah, this is all about again the North and South Korea divide, the hate between the two Koreas and the people there, their very complex dynamics and the history there. And just like Ronin said, that it's about like why can't we just get along and why can't we can understand each other better? Why do we always have to be on each other's throats? And yeah, does there have to be so much hate when in the end we are all just people, we are all just humans, no matter like in which country you have born and which country, like whether you are inside the borders of South Korea or North Korea or whatever country or whatever continent. Okay, we are all just people, and like that just seems to be something that's so hard to realize for so many people in this world, which is just so sad, and we never seem to get past those differences and that hatred. There just isn't enough humanistic people in this world, unfortunately. I think I even wrote an essay last year on a humanism class about that whether humanism can ever be victorious when there are always people who find a certain group to hate or always find something to hate about people who are from a different country or different gender or different sexuality or different religion or whatever. So I think that okay, we can never get past that hatred, unfortunately, even though maybe more and more people will get past it, but there will always be significant amount of people who will be hateful bigots and stuff. So that's such a sad thing about the world, but it's just something that I guess we have to deal with. Yeah, but a great movie. Great movie. Yeah. Fairly simple story, but it says so much about the world. So and it doesn't just say that about again the North Korea or South Korea divide, but also about the world and humanity in general. So love those films that are about something particular, but they are also about something universal. So this film is something that I really don't understand, but I just love it as it is so weird and different. And yeah, so it's D for Reality by Antoinetta Angelidi, Greek director that not many people know of, but I a few years ago found out about her from Letterboxd. I think it was like again you have the review from Edgar Cochran, really famous Letterboxd person, and I think I from his list I found out about Antoinette Angelidi and watched a couple of her films and fell in love with them. But it's just crazy, low budget, experimental stuff, and very theatrical stuff, very painting like stuff, like really weird vibes, and like I really don't know what this film is about. So maybe I will after a rewatch, but yeah, great stuff, great stuff. Then this one I also desperately need to rewatch. But it's Eureka by Shinji Aoyama. Another film about trauma, like Mysterious Skin. I actually have a feeling that if I rewatch this today, this would probably be higher up on the list, but as I don't remember it well enough, I didn't want to put it too high. This is a very long film and it has kind of like a awful release history, unfortunately, that it's often kind of hard to track down. It's very sad as it is so good. And it has some like vibes from the Japanese new wave era, how it is a complex film, how it's shot, everything feels kind of like that era, how it deals with these difficult topics. But it's a very emotional powerhouse type of film that really makes you feel and maybe even gets you so emotional that you might get a bit teary eyed. I know this film has had that effect on many people and had very strong effect on me. But it's one of those films where you wouldn't change a thing. It's just one of those absolutely perfect films, and I really need to get more into Shinji Aoyama's work in general. I'm pretty sure that this is the only one that I've seen from him, but another masterpiece. So if you can get your hands on this, I would highly recommend it. Yeah. And why hasn't this been released by Third Window or somebody? It would be perfect film for a nice Blu-ray release. So But that was my list. Hopefully you got maybe some recommendations from the list and let me know what are some of your favorite films from the 2000s. You don't have to leave 25, although you can leave 25 if you have 25 but that you know are your favorites, but you can also leave like one of your favorites from the decade or a couple of your favorites, 5 or 10 or even 100. If you want, then of course response videos are always welcome too. But I think I'm gonna continue doing these response videos to Solitary Ronin's kind of video series where he goes through the decades. So next up should be 1990s, which will be like a fairly difficult decade to rank. This 2000s one was actually fairly easy. It was actually easier for me than 2010s for some reason. But 90s has more of my favorites. I think my favorites list has like between 40 and 50 films from the 1990s, so I have to leave out many of my favorites from that 25, so that will be difficult, but at least I know my number one already, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing Ronin's list as well. I think he said that his 90s list will have way more English speaking films than the 2000s list, for example, but for me, it will be quite world cinema dominated, but there will be some English speaking stuff from Lynch and Mike Lee, for example, but there will be still lots of films from all over the world, so yeah. But anyway, thanks for watching. Don't drink Coke at all. Sayonara and arigato gozaimashita.